No one in New York dared say the name Adrian Vale out loud. In courtrooms, in police precincts, in private clubs where power changed hands over crystal glasses, the name traveled only in whispers. Adrian Vale controlled ports, shipping unions, casinos, and politicians. His fortune crossed 9 digits. His reach crossed oceans. Yet all that power meant nothing on the night his only child began to fade. The baby's name was Leo, 5 months old, born perfect, loud, and hungry. But somewhere between his 4th and 5th month, his tiny body began shrinking as if time itself were pulling him backward. His cheeks hollowed. His ribs sharpened beneath pale skin. His laughter disappeared. Adrian did what men like him always did. He bought answers. In 3 weeks, Leo saw 17 doctors, neonatal experts from Boston, pediatric specialists from Stanford, private consultants flown in on chartered jets, blood tests, scans, genetic screens, endocrine panels, allergy trials. $2 million vanished. And still no diagnosis. Your son is healthy, they said. His organs are normal. His digestion appears stable. There is no disease we can identify. Healthy babies did not lose weight every day. Healthy babies did not cry in exhaustion. Healthy babies did not slowly starve. Adrian Vale, who had never pleaded with anyone in his life, finally did something unthinkable. He begged. The suggestion came from an unlikely place. The family's longtime housekeeper, an elderly woman who had raised half the staff's children, mentioned a young doctor from the public hospital downtown. A woman who had once caught a rare infection no specialist noticed. A doctor who listened. She doesn't look important, the woman said, but she saves lives. Her name was Dr. Alina Moore, 28 years old, 3 hospital jobs, 1 moldy apartment, student loans stacked like bricks around her neck. She had slept in call rooms more nights than her own bed. When the call came, Alina nearly refused, until she heard the word baby, until she heard the phrase, "He is disappearing, doctor." She arrived at the Vale estate after a 30-hour shift, driving a dented sedan into a driveway lined with armored cars. Men with earpieces searched her bag, scanned her coat, and watched her breathe. Inside, the mansion felt less like a home and more like a guarded kingdom. And in the center of it all, in a nursery filled with luxury and light, lay a child who looked nothing like a prince. Leo Vale weighed less than he should have weighed at 3 months. Alina touched his tiny wrist. His pulse was normal. His lungs were clear. No fever, no infection, no visible illness. Yet when she lifted him, he felt light. Too light. And when she met his mother for the first time, Alina felt something else. Not fear, not grief, but distance. The woman stood far from the crib and did not touch her child. That was when Alina realized this illness was not in the baby's body. It was in this house, and someone inside these walls was hiding the truth. But who would hurt their own child and why? Alina told herself she was imagining things. Exhaustion could twist perception. Fear could invent patterns. Wealth could make ordinary distance seem sinister. Still, something about that nursery felt wrong. She spent the first day observing quietly, recording feed times, measuring intake, watching diapers, checking vitals. Leo drank normally. He swallowed eagerly, clutched the bottle with surprising strength. And yet, by evening, his stomach cramped. His tiny body curled. His cries sharpened into screams that echoed through marble hallways. By dawn, his diaper told the story. Watery, greenish, too frequent, too violent, Alina frowned. A healthy infant did not produce stool like that. She asked the nanny, Rosa, gentle questions. When do the symptoms start? Always after midnight feeding, Rosa whispered. Who feeds him then? The nanny hesitated. Mrs. Vale insists on doing it herself. That night, Alina didn't sleep. She sat in the dark nursery chair, lights dimmed, heart steady, eyes open. The mansion sank into silence. 1 hour passed. 2. At 2:41 a.m., the door opened without a sound. Leo's mother entered. She wore silk, barefoot, hair loose, expression unreadable. In her hand was a bottle Alina did not recognize, not from the prepared tray, not from the refrigerator. Alina did not move. She watched. The woman mixed formula at the side table, her movements precise, rehearsed. Then came the moment Alina would never forget. From the pocket of her robe, the mother removed a tiny vial. White powder, just a pinch. Shaken into the milk. Alina's breath froze. The woman lifted her son gently, fed him slowly, whispering nothing. No lullabies, no kisses, no tears. Only silence. When she left, Alina waited. 20 minutes later, Leo's body tightened. 10 minutes after that, the screaming began. Diarrhea followed almost immediately. Alina's hands trembled as she changed him. This was no illness. This was poisoning, but suspicion was not proof. And accusing the wife of the most dangerous man on the coast without evidence was a death sentence. At dawn, Alina did something reckless. She went to the kitchen. She searched the trash, and there it was. The bottle, at the bottom, settled like snow, was pale residue, not formula, not milk. Medicine. Alina scraped a sample into a sterile tube and hid it in her coat. As she turned to leave, she noticed something else. In the security room, the camera feed for the nursery skipped from 2:00 a.m. to 4:00 a.m. every night. Someone was disabling the cameras. Someone with authority. That afternoon, Alina sent the sample to a lab in secret. And while she waited, the mother began watching her. Closely. Too closely. Because in houses built on power and secrets, doctors who look too carefully do not survive long. The message arrived just before noon. 3 words on Alina's phone, glowing like a warning flare. "Call me now." It was from Marcus, the lab technician who owed her a favor from residency. Alina closed the nursery door behind her, heart already racing, and stepped into an empty hallway. "What did you find?" she whispered. There was a long pause on the other end. "Alina, where did this sample come from? Just tell me." Another breath. "It's a stimulant laxative, industrial grade. 10 times the safe adult dose." The words struck like a hammer. "What happens to a baby who drinks this every night?" Alina asked, though she already knew. "Chronic diarrhea, dehydration, electrolyte collapse, organ failure. If it continues, death." Alina slid down against the wall. Someone had been slowly killing Leo, and the only person feeding him at night was his own mother. By evening, Alina understood how dangerous she now was. The mother, Clara Vale, followed her with her eyes. In conversations, she probed. "Why so many notes, doctor? Why do you walk the halls at night? Are you searching for something?" Alina answered calmly. But fear tightened in her chest. She needed proof, not theory, not lab results alone, proof that would survive courts, power, and vengeance. There was only one man in the house she trusted enough to risk. Anton, the head of security. Former soldier, scar across his jaw, quiet eyes that softened every time Leo cried. That evening, Alina met him in the surveillance room. She showed him the lab report, showed him the camera blackout times, and finally said the words that could end her life. "Someone is poisoning the baby, and I think it's his mother." Anton stared at the paper, then at the nursery feed. His fists tightened. "She turns the cameras off herself," he muttered. "Only 2 people have access. Can you help me catch her?" Alina asked. A long silence. Finally, Anton nodded. That night, he hid a second camera inside a stuffed bear, one only he could control. Alina waited in her room, phone trembling in her hands. At 2:53 a.m., the door opened on the screen. Clara entered, mixed the formula, reached into her robe, poured the powder. And then she spoke, not to anyone, to the baby. "I'm sorry, my little light," she whispered. "But when you're sick, your father stays home. When you're sick, he looks at me again, just a little longer, just enough so he doesn't forget I exist." Alina covered her mouth, tears blurring her vision. A mother was poisoning her child for attention. The recording saved automatically. Proof at last. Alina rose from her bed. She had to protect Leo. She had to tell his father. But she never made it to the stairs. Because in the darkness of the hallway, a hand closed around her wrist. And a voice, trembling with fury, whispered, "You were not supposed to see that." Alina's heart slammed so violently she thought it might burst through her ribs. Clara Vale stood before her in the dim hallway, no longer graceful, no longer distant. Her eyes burned. Her fingers crushed Alina's wrist. "You recorded me," Clara hissed. Alina tried to pull free, but Clara's strength came from desperation, the kind that ignores pain, reason, and mercy. "You don't understand," Clara whispered, dragging her toward the stairwell. "He belongs to me, Adrian belongs to me, and you're trying to take everything." "I'm trying to save your son," Alina gasped. Clara laughed, a sound hollow and broken. "You're trying to make me invisible again?" She ripped the phone from Alina's hand. The screen still glowed. "Proof. Confession, everything. Clara's face twisted, and then she pushed. Alina felt weight vanish beneath her feet. The world turned into marble and air. She tumbled. Steps struck her spine, shoulder, skull. A bone cracked, she heard it before she felt it. The last thing she saw was Clara's pale face at the top of the staircase, expression calm. Then darkness. When Alina woke, she was surrounded by white. Hospital white. Beeping machines. Bandages, her arm hung in a cast, her head throbbed as if split open. And beside her sat the last man she expected to see cry. Adrian Vale, the emperor of half the coast, eyes hollow, suit rumpled, hands shaking. "You fell," he said quietly, "down the stairs." Memory flooded back, the bottle, the powder, the video. "Leo," Alina whispered. "Is he safe?" Adrian closed his eyes. "Yes, because of you." Anton had found her at dawn, unconscious, bleeding. But before the ambulance came, he had already sent the video to Adrian. Adrian had watched, every second, every word. His wife's confession, his son drinking poison, his empire collapsing in silence. "I called the police," Adrian said. "For the first time in my life, I didn't use my own hands." Clara was arrested that morning. No guards protected her. No lawyers delayed it. She went quietly, too quietly. "She admitted everything," Adrian said, voice breaking. "She said she never wanted him dead, only weak, only dependent, only enough so I would stay." Tears slid down the face of the man feared by thousands. "How does a mother do that?" he asked. Alina had no answer. Leo was transferred to intensive care, IV fluids, electrolytes, nutrition. Within 48 hours, the color returned to his skin. By day 3, he smiled. A small, fragile miracle, but peace never comes free. 3 nights later, Adrian received a call, from Moscow, from Sergei Volkov, Clara's father, leader of the second-largest syndicate on the coast. "You humiliated my blood," the voice growled. "You sent my daughter to prison. You broke our alliance." "She poisoned my son," Adrian replied coldly. "She is sick," Volkov said. "She belongs with family, not police." "Threaten me again," Adrian said, "and I'll erase your name from the city." The line went dead. That same night, Alina disappeared, her car found abandoned, door open, keys on the ground, and no trace of the woman who had saved the most powerful child in New York. The city woke without knowing it was already at war. By sunrise, every port, club, warehouse, and backroom tied to the Volkov syndicate was under surveillance. By noon, 3 informants had vanished. By evening, Adrian Vale sat alone in his office, staring at Alina's abandoned car photos like they were a crime scene from his own soul. "She was taken near the hospital," Anton reported. "No cameras, clean grab, professional." Adrian didn't shout. He didn't break furniture. He simply said, "Find her." And when Anton hesitated, Adrian's voice dropped to something colder. "Burn the city if you must." Within hours, the underworld moved. Bribes loosened tongues. Threats opened doors. Fear traveled faster than money. By midnight, Adrian had his answer. An abandoned cold storage warehouse on the edge of Brooklyn. Former Volkov property, used now only for one thing: silencing enemies. Alina woke tied to a chair. Basement. Concrete. Damp air that smelled of rust and blood. Her wrists burned. Her ribs screamed. And before her stood a tall man with silver hair and eyes like winter. "Dr. Moore," he said calmly, "I am Sergei Volkov." She said nothing. "You destroyed my family," he continued. "My daughter is in prison. My name is mocked. And now you will fix it." Men struck her, not to kill, only to remind her she could die slowly. "Call Adrian," Volkov ordered. "Tell him to free Clara and give me half of Manhattan's." Alina lifted her head. "No," the slap split her lip. "Again," Volkov snarled. "No," she repeated. Another blow. She tasted blood. "I will not help you free a woman who poisoned her own child." Volkov stared at her, then smiled. "Brave little doctor." He leaned close. "You'll watch him burn for this." Adrian did not wait. No negotiations. No diplomacy. At 3:17 am, 20 armed vehicles surrounded the warehouse. Anton led the breach. Adrian led the killing. Gunfire tore through steel. Guards fell before they understood what was happening. Blood ran across concrete floors. Adrian moved like a machine. No mercy. No hesitation. Down the stairs, through the hallway. Until he found her. Alina, bruised, bloody, still sitting upright. and behind her Volkov holding a gun to her temple. "Step back, Vale," Volkov shouted, "or she dies." Adrian lowered his weapon slowly, looked only at Alina. She met his gaze and shook her head. "Don't stop." He fired, not at Volkov, at the hand holding the gun. The shot shattered bone. Before Volkov could scream, Adrian crossed the room and ended him with a single bullet. Silence fell. Adrian cut Alina free, lifted her into his arms, hands shaking. "I'm here," he whispered. "You're safe now." She tried to smile. "You came." He carried her out while his empire burned behind him. In the hospital 2 days later, Adrian confessed everything. His crimes, his past, his fear, and finally, his feelings. "I don't deserve you," he said, "but I cannot lose you." Alina closed her eyes, exhausted, alive, and uncertain what saving this child had truly cost her. Alina remained in the hospital for 6 days. Broken arm, concussion, deep bruises across her ribs and spine, but the worst injuries were the ones no scan could measure. Nightmares woke her screaming. The stairwell, the basement, the gun at her temple, and every time she woke, Adrian was there, sometimes silent, sometimes holding her hand like it was the only thing keeping him alive. On the 7th morning, he brought an envelope, thick, heavy, her name written in careful ink. "I should have done this sooner," he said quietly. Alina frowned. "If this is money, open it." Inside were documents, loan statements, balances. Zeroed out, her student debt gone, all of it, $200,000 erased. She stared. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "I know," Adrian replied. "That's why I did it." He hesitated. "There's more." He told her about Lily, her foster sister, the cancer, the surgery she could never afford. "She had the transplant 3 days ago," Adrian said softly. "It was successful. She's recovering well." Alina broke, not elegantly, not quietly. She sobbed like a child who had finally been allowed to collapse. "Why?" she cried. "You barely know me." Adrian knelt beside her bed. "You saved my son when no one else could. You stood against my power. You almost died protecting a child who wasn't yours." He touched her hand. "That changes a man." Weeks passed. Leo came home, healthy, laughing, chubby again. The mansion transformed. Toys replaced guns. Nursery laughter replaced whispered meetings. Adrian canceled deals, missed summits, ignored threats. For the first time in decades, the empire ran without him, because he was learning how to be a father. And slowly, something else grew. Evenings by the fireplace, conversations about childhood, shared silence that felt safe. One night, Adrian said quietly, "You're the only person who has ever spoken to me without fear." Alina answered, "Because I'm not afraid of what you are, only of what you might become." He smiled, and tried, truly tried. He shut down trafficking routes, sold illegal ports, redirected money into hospitals, created a foundation for abused children and postpartum mothers. Not redemption, but a beginning. Then the letter arrived, from prison, from Clara. She had been diagnosed, a rare psychiatric disorder. Treatment had begun. In her letter, Alina spent the night at Lily's bedside. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and hope. Tubes ran from her foster sister's arm, machines whispered softly, and for the first time in months, Lily's face held color instead of shadow. "You're here," Lily murmured with a weak smile. "I thought you'd forgotten me for rich criminals and miracle babies." Alina laughed through tears and held her hand, but inside, her heart was splitting, because every thought drifted back to the mansion, to Leo's laughter, to Adrian's quiet eyes when he asked her to stay. For the first time in her life, Alina stood at the edge of something dangerous. Not violence, not fear, belonging, and that frightened her more than any gun ever had. 3 days later, she returned to the Vale estate. The house felt warmer now, lighter, but tension hummed beneath the peace. Anton met her at the door. "Boss hasn't slept," he said quietly. "Someone's been moving in the shadows again." "What do you mean?" "Volkov had a brother." The words hit like ice. "Dmitry Volkov," Anton continued. "Ex-military, brutal, silent. He vanished after Sergei's death." Alina felt a chill crawl up her spine. "Where is he now?" Anton shook his head. "That's the problem. No one knows." That night, Alina finally spoke with Adrian, in the library, fire burning low. Silence thick. "I'm leaving," she said. Adrian didn't react, not at first. "To go back to my hospital," she explained. "To my life. I can't live inside an empire, Adrian. I'm not built for cages, even golden ones. He nodded slowly. I knew you'd say that. She hesitated. But I don't want to disappear. Their eyes met, and in that quiet moment, neither power nor fear stood between them. Only two people who had survived too much. Adrian took a breath. Then don't leave forever, he said. Just don't vanish from my world. She smiled. I won't. But fate had other plans. At 3:12 a.m., alarms shattered the mansion. Security lights flared. Gunfire cracked through the east wing. Elena bolted upright. Anton burst into her room. Grab Leo, he shouted. We've got intruders. The nursery erupted into chaos. Guards fell. Shadows moved too fast to track. Adrian stormed in, weapon raised. Elena, stay behind me, but too late. A figure appeared at the window, silent, dead-eyed. Rifle trained on the crib, Dmitry Volkov, the last brother, the last vengeance. Adrian fired, missed, glass exploded. The bullet flew straight toward the sleeping child. Elena didn't think. She ran, threw herself over the crib, and felt fire tear through her shoulder. She screamed, collapsed. Blood soaked the blankets, but Leo was untouched, alive. By dawn, Volkov was dead, shot by Anton on the roof. The war ended at last, and Elena lay in surgery again, having saved the same child twice. Elena woke to sunlight and silence, not the sharp silence of danger, but the gentle kind that follows storms. Her shoulder burned beneath layers of bandages. Her body ached in places she didn't remember injuring. Machines beeped steadily, reminding her she was still alive. And beside her bed sat Adrian Vale, not in a suit, not armored. Just a tired man in a simple shirt, hair uncombed, eyes red from a night without sleep. You saved him again, he said softly. Elena closed her eyes, breathing slowly. I didn't save him, she whispered. I protected him. There's a difference. Adrian reached for her hand, careful not to hurt her. Volkov is dead, the last of them, the war is over, she nodded, but peace felt unfamiliar. Recovery took weeks. Leo never left her side when she returned to the mansion. He learned to walk while holding her uninjured hand, learned to say "mama" without knowing what the word truly meant. And every time he laughed, something inside Adrian healed that he had never known was broken. But Elena still hesitated, still slept in the guest wing, still kept one foot outside the life forming around her. Until one evening, when she found Adrian alone in the study, staring at a single document, a resignation from his own empire. I'm stepping back, he said quietly. Legitimate business only. The rest, I'm dismantling. She looked at him in disbelief. You can't just leave that world. I can, he replied, because my son deserves a father, not a king, and because if I want you in my life, I cannot ask you to live in blood. He met her eyes. This is my choice, not for you, for myself. That was the moment Elena understood. He was not changing for love. He was changing because love had changed him. Months passed. The foundation expanded. Hospitals opened. Abuse hotlines funded. Children rescued from shadows no one talked about. Adrian Vale's name slowly shifted, from fear to something closer to respect. And one quiet winter morning, in the same nursery where death had once lived, Adrian knelt. No guards, no diamonds, just a ring, simple and honest. I don't know how to be a good man, he said, but I know how to try, and I know I want to try with you. Elena looked at Leo, asleep in her arms. Then at the man who had once ruled the city through fear and now ruled only one small boy through love. Yes, she whispered. Years later, people would speak of the fall of Adrian Vale's empire. They would never know the real reason. Not politics, not enemies, not law, but a dying baby, a stubborn doctor, and a mother brave enough to throw herself in front of a bullet. Because sometimes redemption does not come through punishment. It comes through protecting what is innocent. And sometimes the darkest men are saved not by power, but by love. If one choice could change a destiny, what would you choose, power, or the life that finally teaches you how to be human?